So I just rode twice Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway here at Disneyland Resort. It's at Disneyland Park, a brand new attraction in the reimagined Toontown, a land that opened back in the early 1990s and now being reinvigorated with this big e-ticket attraction. And as many of you know, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Runaway Railway at Disney's Hollywood Studios, even though I'm wearing the appropriate shirt today. Tom, why would you buy the shirt of an attraction you don't like? Well, that's a great question. Probably mostly because I knew this day would come and I'd have to open another one of these, or go to the opening of another one of these. I didn't personally open it. I don't work for the Walt Disney Company. But I know many of you know how I feel about Runaway Railway, and you probably think you know how this review is going to go. But I think you're going to be very surprised in this Tom's Honest review of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at Disneyland Park. First off, I need to apologize for the crudeness of this review, right? We have a beautiful studio at WDWNT Celebration in Florida that I do these reviews with a beautiful audio quality. Jake, our producer, does wonderful work and everything looks lit and great. Obviously, I won't be back in Florida for several days, and you guys want to hear about the ride now. And so we're just gonna have to deal with it. I know the audio's not amazing, but I tested a little bit. You can hear me, right? So I apologize for that quality, but this is all in an effort to make sure we get this to you as soon as possible so you can, we've built 15 years of reputation as a company built upon giving you stuff as it happens, content and news and information as it happens. In an effort to get it to you as quickly as possible, sometimes we have to do things that are a little below quality standards. So again, apologies, but let's get moving. So a quick recap of the story thus far. In 2016-ish, there are rumors flying around of the Great Mickey Ride to replace the Great Movie Ride, maybe even 2015-ish. And so the story that I've heard is that was a different attraction that was in development to replace the Great Movie Ride. Either way, the company decided they wanted to get rid of the Great Movie Ride and they wanted to put a Mickey Mouse, the first Mickey Mouse ride-through attraction ever built, they wanted to put there. And so at some point that morphed into, and a different team took over, and they decided on Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which would be a trackless ride based on purely the more recent Mickey Mouse animated shorts in that particular style. They decided on that over a ride that sort of went through the history of Mickey Mouse's career, if you will. And so everyone knows Hollywood Studios, at that point in my life, Epcot Center when I was a kid was my favorite park. Later in my life, Hollywood Studios, MGM, my favorite. That resonated more with me as I got older, and Epcot's changed into something that I wasn't a big fan of, and most people weren't for that matter. That became my favorite park, and part of that was the Great Movie Ride, because I set out on a mission in my teenage years to watch every movie featuring the Great Movie Ride. Not just the ones in the scenes, not just those in the pre-show, but even those in the film montage at the end, because I just wanted to know what was going on, what everything was in the ride. And in the course of doing that, I really fell in love with a lot of movies that are very much outside of my lifetime, things that are much older. I watched a lot of Turner Classic Movies, and we're talking about before they even did the overlay where TCM got tied into the movie ride. And I fell in love with that attraction because it opened up my eyes to a world of things that I was not familiar with, and I fell in love with so many of them. Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, all of those things I had not really seen in my life, and some more obscure stuff that's in the montage got to see. And I mean, not every movie was good, but nonetheless, it was all like Epcot, and of course, Movie Ride originally intended for Future World at Epcot, funny enough. But the idea, same as Epcot Center, is to introduce something to you. And there are movies that you know and love in that ride, but there's also a bunch of stuff that you can go out and discover on your own when you got home from vacation. That's what Epcot was too. We're going to introduce you to this subject over the course of 10 to 15 minutes of ride. And then if that sparks your interest and you decide you really are passionate about this thing, the ride has changed your life in a way and opened your eyes to something you didn't know about. And you could start really delving into that topic more at home. Of course, obviously Great Movie Ride, entertainment based, less noble than if you pick up the cause for renewable energy or sustainable crops and all those sort of things. But nonetheless, I was inspired and I fell in love with the Great Movie. I always loved the Great Movie Ride, but really fell in love with it in my teenage years. And then that was taken away from me for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Now, I wasn't mad about it originally. I was not I was upset. I was sad that Movie Ride was leaving, and that's why we ended up throwing that big farewell party that we threw together in 2 weeks. We rented out the ride, and we had a dessert party in it, and everyone got to come and say goodbye, which remains one of the highlights of my life. Shout out to those of you out there that got to go to that, all 250 of you. And then again, to be on the closing weekend, that was amazing. And then I got to be in the last car on Movie Ride, which was terrific honor, and I got to ride with so many other people who admired the ride as much as I did. Now, that being said, I totally understood it was time for at least an update of the Great Movie Ride. That's what I had hoped would happen, and it didn't. Instead, they decided to go a new direction. Now, I very, very early on, I think basically shortly after the ride closed, people started to send me plans and different things for Runaway Railway, and just seeing the layout and people talking about the animatronics and things like that, I was cautiously optimistic. I was like, okay, the ride has several animatronics. It's trackless. It has these cool scenes. It has several scenes that have very loving tributes to the Great Movie Ride, which means the people making this ride cared enough to be like, there are several things related to Movie Ride we should put in this to make it the spiritual successor, while still remaining true to what their vision was for a ride based on the current day Mickey Mouse cartoons, right? And so I was cautiously optimistic, and as we got closer and closer, I liked the marquee was good. I liked all the things on the exterior. Then we get to March of 2020, and this is before the world changed forever, just a few short days before that happened. And we get to the opening of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at Disney's Hollywood Studios, and ride the ride the first time, and I didn't do honest review videos back then, and so you probably, if you watched WDW News Tonight or some other shows where we ended up talking about Railway, you have some idea of my thoughts on the first iteration of the ride. My initial thoughts were, I'm so glad the Chinese theater continues to exist in Florida. I'm so glad that they kept so much of the queue intact, because it is a beautiful recreation of a thing that today in real Los Angeles is pretty run down, but this really captures it in that heyday of Hollywood, restored beautifully, essentially. The pre-show rooms are great. I love the pre-show of Runaway Railway. Works perfectly. It's a really cute little short video, little short cartoon that opens things up, and I won't do spoilers yet for those who maybe haven't seen it in Florida, but there's a really neat effect that happens, and you all know this part. You're going through a screen into the cartoon world. In theory, it's all very cool, and it is, and it works really well on the ride. For me, the Disney World ride falls apart on ride. I think there are many, many problems. I think number one, the pacing is horrible. There are several seats where you miss what I feel are important story elements, and so you have no idea. Several seats, I think there's like one or two rows. There's one car you can sit in where I think you see enough to make the storyline passable. But I think there are 3 of the 4 vehicles you ride in, and it's just like, do you know what happened on the ride? I have no idea. I have bits and pieces, but it is impossible to piece together, other than what we saw in the pre-show, what is going on. Beyond that, some of the US and some of the Disney Disney paid for trackless rides have a lot of big empty space in them. They feel kind of, they're just so big and cavernous. So they lack that detail, right? Great Movie Ride. For those of us who got to do the dessert party and stuff, what's amazing is you walk out into those sets, and in the gangster scene, like the garbage can is covered in newspapers that are actually time accurate. And like, if you explore into those spaces, there's so much detail and artistry. And that's what makes Disney attractions great, right? Think about your absolute favorite Disney rides of all time. That level of detail is what it makes it feel real. Like Pirates of the Caribbean, those sets look like a real village in the Caribbean that you could walk through. In Haunted Mansion, those look like the real interior of some abandoned mansion somewhere, haunted house. All those great attractions. That's what it's all about. And so in the case of Runaway Railway, because it relies so much on projection technology, they are sort of big empty square rooms with projectors in them. And that's not to knock the animation. Very talented people make the animation. The animation's pretty. But the prettiest animation displayed on the wrong format takes the magic away from it, right? If we can go back in time and talk to Walt Disney, I guarantee you he would tell you anyone who watched Fantasia not in the format he specifically wanted, and this is a good fun thing to look up, is his fight to present Fantasia in a very different format than was acceptable at the time. I'm sure he would have told you at that time. Similar to James Cameron, right, where he's like, you shouldn't watch Avatar not in 3D. It's like there's a very specific way I think this movie should be viewed to make it work. And I think the same for Runaway Railway. Like, it's beautiful animation. I just think so much of the time it is displayed in from a horrible viewpoint, or just not from a thoughtful vantage point for the people riding the ride. Or maybe it works from, like I said before, maybe there's one car where you look and it's like, oh, that looks, I see what's happening and that looks cool. And then I'm in car 4 coming into that jungle scene, and not only did I miss everything that happened, but I was at such a weird angle that I can't even really tell that was a jungle. I just saw like some bright greenery for 2.5 seconds, and then I'm suddenly falling over a waterfall. And part of that's pacing, and some of that is staging, and some of that is also just the staging. And no, going back to the staging is right. The screen is not in the best format or in the best place to be seen by everyone in the ride. Staging, incredibly important, right? Mark Davis was the master. Imagineer Mark Davis. Look at those scenes in Pirates. They are so beautifully staged. No matter where you're sitting in that boat, whether you're on the side of the scene or not, you can see what's going on. That is putting all that thought in and thinking about what people will see. If you think about it, I'm sure many of you have watched that Disneyland 10th anniversary special where Walt Disney walks the first Disneyland ambassador, Julie Ream, through the model of Pirates of the Caribbean, and they're at sort of the people's vantage point walking through the model, where that's so they could get an idea of what the guest would see and where things should be. And I know for a fact, and I'm sure any Imagineer will tell you, they have incredible tools today that far surpass what was available to them in the 60s, where digitally they can see everything the guest is going to see, right? And so there's not the nicest way to say this, but there's no excuse, right? There's no excuse for that other than budget or time or whatever the case may be. Like, concessions were made. I'm not going to say it's because no one cared, because I don't know the daily goings on of Walt Disney Imagineering. I couldn't tell you for sure, except whatever people have ever told me. But in the case of Railway, I have no inside knowledge of what happened in the production of that ride. But I'm sure something happened, because I would be shocked if some of that Hollywood Studios ride is the final product that the people that designed the ride intended. I would be very surprised if everything, and most rides, not everything always turns out the way the creative people want it to, because again, there are concessions for time and budget and many other things. Managers come in and think they know better and throw their weight around and all sorts of stuff. It's a big corporation. That stuff happens. The creative people fight a fight all the time between their vision and what can actually be made. So those are my core issues with Runaway Railway. Those are core issues. And then also animatronics. There's several figures in that Hollywood, and they're in this one too, and they're still a thing I don't love. The Picasso-esque audio animatronic representations of Mickey and Minnie, they don't work for me. I don't think they're great figures. I think they're kind of wonky. They're kind of weird. And it's weird because you see Daisy in the dance studio sequence at animatronic. She is fully dimensional. She's full figure, whole body. She's there. She looks good, and she's got the screen eyes and stuff, which isn't my favorite thing. But I think it worked great. I think it's a good looking figure, and it achieves what it's supposed to. And I wish everyone in the ride had turned out like that. Pluto in the last scene looks, sometimes I nitpick, right? Like I spend all of my life almost in theme parks. And so I have seen it all, and it makes it easy to nitpick. I understand that. When you've seen so much and you're in it all the time, it's very easy to draw comparisons and nitpick things. And so with Pluto's eyes, sometimes the brightness is a little too high and it doesn't really mesh with the rest of his head, which is the complaint with Frozen Ever After, right? Like not that the animation in the face isn't great in the Epcot attraction. The problem is it doesn't blend, right? You end up seeing that when you see that scene between the screen face and the physical, it takes you out of the show. You are reminded in that moment that the thing you are seeing is not real. Not that we don't know that, right? But for kids, but as an adult, we can pretend, right? And for kids, when you're super young, it can be very real to you. And I know I've seen so many kids go on rides like Haunted Mansion or whatever. They think a lot of what they're seeing they think is real, and even though their parents tell them it's not, it's you're young, you're a kid, you're gonna believe it. But you have those moments with your adult or young child. There are those moments that take you out of the story. And when you see things that very clearly, like the character you're meant to look at and there's like a seam or something in their face, it takes you out of the story. And that happens a little bit with Pluto, but nonetheless, he looks like the character. He's three-dimensional, he's great. Mickey and Minnie, always, again, that weird Picasso style with the side profile, projected face, and I think they could have done better with those. It's not that they're even not impressive. Some of the motion on them is really cool in that it does that sort of the animation style, right? The stretch and bounce. And you see that when Mickey moves his head around, the ears kind of wobble. And so animation wise, like with the figures they built, they did a good job. It's just, I don't think they work great. I don't think they're the best figures. And I think, I think we do need to get away from the projector faces. And I feel like the company as a whole has realized that as, and not only, obviously, OLC, Oriental Land Company, operates Tokyo Disney Resort. And when they did their Frozen ride and all the other new stuff they're doing at Fantasy Springs, or even their Beauty and the Beast stuff, they opted not to do projection faces. I think seeing what happened with Frozen Ever After, we're like, no, let's do the full, let's build the face. Let's build and articulate the face. And kudos to Disney, whoever was involved, now they're building Frozen Ever After, the clones of the Epcot ride in Hong Kong Disneyland and Walt Disney Studios Paris. And kudos to them for being like, you know what? Let's build those new figures with the articulated faces. Let's not make that mistake again. That's great. That's awesome. I love when, obviously, like, I don't think the screen faces came from a budgetary concern. I think someone made them for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and the ones in Mine Train look good. I think those work fine. It's the one case where I think they worked beautifully, and at no point do they take me out of the story. Frozen is the one where that was the first one they did where it was like, oh, maybe it's not always the best idea, even if it is an animated character. Maybe that's not always the solution. And it's a learning process, right? It's you have technology available, but maybe sometimes that technology is not always the best way to carry out this art form, right? And sometimes I have that moment with Runaway Railway where there are things I look at and I'm like, that could have been a physical prop and been spectacular. And I had a moment in this Runaway Railway where, so the last room of the queue, we're going to talk about the queue a lot in a few moments, but just to illustrate this point, the last room in the queue where the concession stand is in the Toontown version, there are props from the recent Mickey Mouse shorts from the current series. And they're beautiful. They're gorgeous. Potato Land, they have the Abraham Lincoln potato, and it's dimensional. It's a beautifully made prop, and it's gorgeous. And I'm standing there like, wow. So you guys could have done it. It was totally possible to build a dimensional ride that took you into the cartoon world of those most recent Mickey shorts. It just maybe, I don't want to say it was purely a budgetary thing. I think there was certainly, you can bring a whole backdrop to life with projection technology, right? But maybe there should have been a better marriage of physical props and that projection mapping technology together. Maybe could have done something wholly more unique and more powerful for guests. But anyway, so final review of the Hollywood Studios version. Animatronics are rough. There's a lot of, I feel like you see a lot of, in those big cavernous rooms, you see a lot of things you're not supposed to see. Soundproofing, projectors where they're placed. A lot of that stuff's visible. And then pacing is horrible. I just think there's all sorts of places where you miss whole story elements. And beyond that, I don't know that I always feel like in the Florida version that it captures the zaniness of being in a cartoon, being in the madcap sort of Toontown world, right? So Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin, that dark ride has existed here and at Tokyo Disneyland since the 1990s. And it's a straight up dark ride. Physical props, not there's no full-blown animatronic characters, right? But enough movement and motion and articulation to where it's a really nice updated version of those classic Fantasyland dark rides, but made for Toontown. And it captures that zaniness in a logical, I know it's a weird statement to say to capture zaniness in a logical form. So that zaniness, right, in Roger Rabbit, it happens in a logical format. You get the transitions, right? And you get the story. The cue sets up a pretty good story of what's going on in this world. And you're at the Toontown Cab Company, you board a cab, and then that first scene sets up the rest of what's happening. Like, oh no, Jessica, original version, not the current Toontown version, but Jessica Rabbit's been kidnapped, Roger and Benny are in trouble, and we're coming along for the ride now, and Roger's gonna go with Benny on this madcap, crazy ride through Toontown, all to find the Weasels and Jessica and save the day. A little bit of the movie story, a little bit not, because they cut characters out, right? Like no Eddie Valiant, no Judge Doom. But nonetheless, like it, and you get to go to all these crazy places, but throughout it's still clear what the story is, and Roger's along, and the pacing, and everyone sees the same stuff on that ride. In Railway, and it's not always bad that people don't always see the same stuff, right? Like Walt loved with Pirates of the Caribbean. He's like, it's so detailed that people see different things every time. But whether or not you see different things every time, the main story, the main plot should be the same for everyone. Whether you pick up different details of that plot every time you ride, that's great. But the main point of what is happening in the attraction has to read for everyone. And in Runaway Railway in Florida, I just don't ever feel like it does. And beyond that, I never feel like it has brief moments of that zaniness of Roger Rabbit, but never quite, I don't know, because the sets are just detailless, because they're all just projected on flat surfaces and everything's pretty flat. You don't feel transported the way you do in Roger, where you're busting through walls and there's new big rooms, and some of that magic is lost for sure. So the end of this review, I'm still not going to tell you the California Runaway Railway is one of the best attractions ever built, because I still don't think that. I still don't. But my review is going to be pretty different. It's going to be pretty different. But in the end, again, I think the Great Movie Ride should have stayed. I think it was a big mistake to not update it. Even if they'd done all Disney movies, I would have been perfectly fine with that. And I think that was the right choice. And also, it's so weird in a company that wants to leverage, this is their terminology, wants to leverage so many of their IPs, their intellectual properties, that they wouldn't chomp at the bit to update that ride and be able to promote several of their favorite franchises simultaneously at once in all one budget, rather than build a separate ride for each thing, right? I thought that was a pretty wild decision to just do Railway and do it as the focal point of a park, because it's not where Railway belongs. It doesn't feel like it belongs in that building. It doesn't feel natural there. But then you have the Mickey's Toontown version of Runaway Railway. And I will say this, so many of my negative feelings about the ride, so many of my problems with the attraction were resolved in this version. I think they got to learn a lot watching the other version. I don't know. I know obviously they had COVID delays, but I wonder if that was used as an opportunity to fix some things, or if they just knew. Maybe they knew right out of the gate, and Disneyland was willing to pay to fix the problems that Disney World was just like, no, what you're doing is good. We don't need to spend more money. It's fine. There is such a pride here at Disneyland Resort. There is a pride, I think, even in management. I think in the management, the cast, I think when Imagineers work on this park, that it is Walt's park. It is the original. It is the icon. And so there is a pride and a responsibility to deliver in that park. And I nothing will ever capture the difference in ride quality between Disneyland and Walt Disney World than putting these two up against each other, at least in the modern era. In the 90s, we had the better tower, we had the better Splash Mountain, but it's clear now in the last couple of decades how things have shifted, just based on, again, the comparison of Runaway Railway, both of which were built under a not great regime. Bob Chapek, whether he was, it's a ride that was developed while he was in charge of the Parks and Resorts division and continued to be built as he was CEO. So he definitely, there's some of his regime in this thing, for sure. But I think in total of all the things that got approved in his time, this is the one ride that probably turned out the best. And I know people are going to go in the comments and misconstrue that a little bit. Galaxy's Edge, that was approved way before him. Pandora approved way before him. Those were not things he specifically greenlit. Runaway Railway was a thing he specifically oversaw and greenlit in his time at Parks and Resorts, and that's why I say that. So first things first, it feels right. Being in Toontown, the thing feels correct. I didn't feel, and I know people are gonna come and be like, oh, all your problems with the Florida one are just that it replaced Great Movie Ride. That's inaccurate. It's absolutely inaccurate. I don't think Movie Ride should have been replaced, and I will always resent that decision. But I trust me, as there's so many of my reviews where I feel like so many people agree, and not everyone ever, but that's what opinions are. Everyone's not going to agree. But I feel like so many of my reviews, a vast majority of people agree. Runaway Railway is clearly the one where most people don't. It gets brought up to me all the time. There's all sorts of people brought up to me. It's like, before I came here for this event, a friend of mine was telling me, he's like, oh yeah, he doesn't like Runaway Railway. Like that's a point people make about me when when someone's like, oh, I met this guy and he wants to do this thing, should we do it, blah blah blah. The thing that gets brought up is like, he thinks Runaway Railway is bad. And because of that, I'm very mindful of that. I don't want my reviews to be biased. I really don't want that. I want to be able to look at things from other people's vantage points and understand why there's a value to them in that project, right? If a ride or a land is designed specifically for a younger audience or an audience that is not me, then I at least take pride in trying to understand the value to them, and that's the review. The review is not just what the ride accomplishes for me or doesn't accomplish for me. I want the review to talk about what it accomplishes for guests. That's the goal of the review. It's not just to be, here's what jaded fanboy who's been going to theme parks for 30-something years and been to them all thinks. That's not, I do try to offer that insight in these, but in the end, the review should be, does the attraction succeed at what it is supposed to be? But getting back to this particular one, the Toontown, I kind of lost my point. My point really was that's what I get for not doing scripts for these. The point really was that I've been on the Runaway Railway in Florida dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and the reason I keep going back is not because I like the ride. It is because I over and over try to see why people like it. I try to see what it is about it that appeals to people, and I have tried so many times And every time we pull into that unload, I get out of the ride and I'm just like, I still don't get it. I still don't get why people think that is one of the best rides they've ever been on. I don't understand it. And I feel different about that, at least with this version. I still feel the same about the Hollywood Studios one. But Toontown, entering through Toontown, past, again, the whole land was not open yet, but the whole right side was there. And a lot of it still as it was. Kudos to Imagineering and everyone involved. I love the fact that they really just restored, in a lot of aspects, what was there. They didn't take away so much of the things that made Toontown what it was. Like the mailboxes with Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit are still there. You turn them and they make noise. They got rid of the fountain, right? The Roger Rabbit fountain, and we know the other fountain's gone. There are little things I'm sad about, but in total, it's still Toontown, right? They've added these big grassy areas to try to achieve something for families with younger kids, and the verdict is still out as of today as to whether that works or not. We're going to find out over time. I'm not willing to make an assessment of that today. Visually, that's my least favorite thing, is just the patch of AstroTurf with a few light posts and a tree. But we'll wait to see the other side. I'll come back in March when the whole land opens, and we'll review the new land as a whole. But the El Capitan Theater facade and Runaway Railway sitting in the middle of all that with a fresh paint job and fresh brick laid for the walkways and stuff didn't feel out of place. It didn't feel like it felt like it's been there forever. It blended in really nicely and it felt like it belonged there. And part of that is not only the facade design, which again, I was concerned because you're trying to take the modern Mickey cartoons, which are a very different art style from the art style that dominated Toontown at Disneyland and in Tokyo Disneyland where it existed. The art style is very much like kind of 1930s, 40s, 50s cartoons, and they all have a very similar style. And even into Roger Rabbit, because it's a movie that is an homage to that era of animation. It all interconnected. And so my fear was you're trying to bring in the Runaway Railway style, which is more Ren and Stimpy, more 90s, 2000s to today. Does that blend together? Could you blend it together? They really found a good way to do it. And a lot of it's achieved through the queue, which is, I will say this, I think it is it's got to be top 10, 15, or 20, maybe even top 10 queues done for any attraction ever. The propping, everything about it trumps the Hollywood Studios one, even though like they kept the Chinese theater. What they updated and did in that one feels lazy, right? We have there's that hallway with the decal walls that has ripped down 50 times. And all I can think about entering this one was the difference in quality, where there was none of that here. And then even little things that didn't need to be ornate were. There was an El Capitan metal popcorn logo on like the call box for the cast members. There were little El Capitan logos just in the little wall dividers, the little metal wall dividers as the wall went on. Every time there was one of those or separated into a new room, there were those little embossed details, not decals, not flat. That's all there. And the beautiful thing about the queue is this transition from, again, you're in Toontown, you're at this theater, and the theater has a lot of history, and all that is captured in an exhibit that is about Mickey, that Minnie has set up, by the way, very lovingly. And the prop work, and it's Mickey's entire career from the beginning to now. And it goes through time. And there are great little Mickey costumes they made for like Brave Little Tailor, Prince and the Pauper, Disco, Mickey Mouse, Mouser size. They made cartoon Mickey sized costumes that are on mannequins, and they're gorgeous. Fantasia. They're all really pretty, and the prop work, like big beanstalks, and the plane from Plane Crazy, and the desk from Mickey's Christmas Carol, from Scrooge's office, all this stuff. And these are things that were not real props in the real world, right? These are animated movies. They are so beautifully constructed and executed in this queue, they are believable. It is as if your favorite Mickey shorts or movies from throughout all of time were real, and these are the props from them, and they're sitting there. And what I said to, I talked to a couple of Imagineers when we exited, and they asked how I felt about the ride. And not the only thing I want to talk about, but obviously you have limited time, people are busy. The one thing I wanted to commend was the queue, because I just could not get over how good the queue was. It really feels like, I know I go on and on about Tokyo because they really let the Imagineers do what they can do in every inch of a project. You could just tell it's oozing with money and care. This queue feels like it would be the queue for a ride at Tokyo Disneyland or Tokyo Disney Sea, which means it really feels like they let the Imagineers do what they can do. They let them do a lot of really cool, thoughtful things that cost money. And I assume the budget for this one was several times larger than the Walt Disney World one. And it paid off. This propping and things interact and things move, and but to see your favorite, and again, because it captures every generation, right? Anyone who's ever been a Disney fan, whether your kids, if they liked Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, or a little younger, and it was Mickey and the Roadster Racers for them, there's a whole section with props from those. So everything, Disco Mickey Mouse, Fantasia, every generation of Disney fan will find the Mickey things they remember from their childhood there. And to see it physical, like that I'm blanking on the name of the short, but the very famous Christmas short, is it Pluto's Christmas Tree, maybe? I forget the name of it. But it's very famous one where Pluto ends up fighting with Chip and Dale, and they're in the tree, and that's one of my absolute favorites. And to see the like burnt up tree and like the little Santa props from that short physically sitting there, like I got a little emotional. It was a little emotional because it's like that thing from my childhood. Someone took the time to be like, that's one of those shorts that has to be represented, and we have to do it this way. And they built this little like living room set with it, and it's so the whole queue is just charming. It's charming and rich in detail, and has fun little Easter eggs throughout. So many thoughtful little details, especially when you get to the concession stand and they have this popcorn machine that looks like it's really making popcorn, but then when you look closer, the kernels are shaped, the popcorn looks like characters. They're the shape of characters' heads. The level of detail is fantastic. And then you look in the little candy cases, and every one of those candy brands is a reference to some of them pretty damn obscure Disney character. Witch Hazel, Darkwing Duck, like some real deep, I mean, Darkwing Duck's probably not that deep of a cut. Witch Hazel's a pretty deep cut. And there are deeper ones throughout the queue, and I'm sure we'll do an Easter egg video at some point, because it's too much to talk about in the honest review. We'll be here too long. But the queue is, and then the great thing is on the Lightning Lane side, you get to see a lot of it. There is one big room at the end of the concession stand and a couple more displays that only the standby people get to see. But it's nice that the Lightning Lane, if you do choose to do that, you do get to see a lot, which is good. But there's a good reason to do the standby. That last room is fantabulous, to use a nonsense word. Like Mousercise was a thing that was around when I was a kid, and to see that little costume and the record on the wall, that was another one where it just it's so cool. Even like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse is not of my time frame, but not of my era. But to see the big Mouse-Kadooer and the handy helper, and I'm like, I've only seen a couple episodes, and to see those in full, I was like, this is cool. This is really neat stuff they've done. The queue is the best thing about it. Again, one of the best Disney attraction queues ever built. And it sets the stage perfectly, right? Because it travels through time from the start of Mickey's career to now, which is those modern shorts, which is what you're going to see. And so, and the theater's beautiful, Art Deco, a little bit toony. Reminds me a lot of Minnie's Style Studio, which just opened in Tokyo, which again is a new Toontown edition that's a little Art Deco and has a lot of similar propping. They're very, very similar in nature. But it's this Art Deco cartoon interior filled with propping, and it just goes on, and all these posters. it is again it's just one of the best queues they've ever done. It's in the conversation for sure, and I guess we'll have to rank them at some point to figure out where this actually fits in for me. But it's up there. It's absolutely up there. I've only been through it twice, and that says a lot. For the ride itself, so many small improvements, right? Those core problems for me still exist, right? But the layout of some of the scenes is much better because you built a new building. Maybe that made it easier to control some of the lighting and some of the vantage points and some of the staging. But at the same point, maybe they just tried harder, or maybe there was more budget. I don't know. Because I feel like once you gutted the Great Movie Ride building, it was bare bones. You could have done whatever at that point. And then you could have fixed a lot of those problems with the ceiling looking not really blending. It's all blended here. Like it fades, like where the scenes end, your eye doesn't get drawn there like it does so much in Florida, I feel like. But so many little things. There's just little vignettes that fill out space differently. Like in the tunnel where the car and the train are, there's just a little vignette with like someone was painting and physical propping, which again, I was like, oh, it can be done. This whole ride could have had way more physical propping and could have been, for me, in the conversation with Pirates and Mansion and Small World and like all of that stuff. It could have been in that conversation as one of the best things they've ever done if they had really leaned more. And same thing I say about Ratatouille. If they leaned more into the physical sets, like the fridge scene, it could have been one of the greatest things ever done. And that's what makes me so mad about those two attractions in total. Is I feel like so much missed potential, missed opportunity to make one of the greatest things ever. You had the foundation for something tremendous, and you just didn't get over the finish line. I still feel that way a bit about Railway, but having it here where it hasn't, number one, it hasn't replaced anything. Number two, it feels right where it is. It doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel forced as much as it does in studios, even if you've never been on the Great Movie Ride. It just feels like it's always been there here. They put together a tremendous queue, and they fixed so many little things in the ride. There's a couple little extra scenes. I don't even know if I want to call them scenes, but there's a little thing with the squid where they finally explain why we're going down a drain, like how we got flushed to the city, the big city scene. There's this really charming little tunnel bridge that the train goes over after the big transformation of the factory into the park area, where Goofy does a whole little different thing that he doesn't do in Florida because it's an added scene. And there's this really nice music that I think completes the transition from the craziness of what just happened in the factory to the serenity of we made it to the park and we're for this relaxing picnic. And it's a beautiful little piece of music that perfectly makes that transition. And then the final scene, I think, is laid out so beautifully too. It does this S-bend where it just so pleasantly shows you Mickey and Minnie and Pluto in the park, and you go around the trees, and then after you've gone around the trees and leave them, then you have the barn and Chubby, and they added like little sound effects for Chubby up in the barn that weren't there. Just so many little changes like that, little added projections, little added physical props, little things here and there that I think in total make this a better Runaway Railway, and one that I'm willing to put a stamp of approval on. One that I'm willing to say, like, it's not my favorite ride, but it is good. I'm willing to say it is a good ride. And that's for anyone who knows how I've gone on and on about Runaway Railway in Florida, that's a big change for me. But yeah, the setting is perfect and it works better, and I like it a lot, and I am stoked. It's not done yet. The exit shop number 1, which is titled Engineer, I forget if it's Souvenirs or Treasures or whatever it is. The image will come up now. Is actually a reference to Engineer Toys, which was a store in old DCA, Old California Adventure. What a deep cut. But just the little things, they just have these velvet curtains set up right now. The store's not ready yet. I think because they don't want to open the store until the land's done. Or maybe merchandise hasn't arrived. I don't really know. but there are just little things you could see over the curtain where I'm like, this store looks just as good as the queue and all the other things they did beyond the ride here. Like there's a track up there that's going to have a little model train that's going to look like Walt's backyard train, and it runs all across the ceiling, and there's more signs and more little deep cut things framed on the wall. I'm so excited for those curtains to come down and see what that shop looks like, because they did it. They did something I have joked somewhat jokingly, probably not really jokingly, over the course of the last week, knowing we're going to come cover the opening of this ride here. There's been a lot of joking in the company that's like, oh, Tom's going to go ride his favorite attraction. He can't wait to go open another Runaway Railway. He's very excited, but everyone joking, myself included, making jokes like, oh yeah, oh, you know me, it's my favorite ride. I can't wait. And then I ate a number of my words, not necessarily on the ride part, but most definitely on the queue and the exit, and they won me over with a lot of really thoughtful little changes, including some on the ride for that matter. That like twister scene, the tornado, you couldn't see in Florida. I feel like you always see the soundproofing in the back, and the path around it is a little weird. It's a little more of a curved path around the tornado here. It still doesn't go around it, which is what I wanted, but and there's like in the wall, there's like these lightning strikes you could actually see that illuminate before you go into the room with the twister. And little things like that made it a better ride, which still has some core problems with those animatronics, some of the vantage points, some of the pacing, and still in total I think could be a little more zany and interesting at times. But in total, it hit more of that, I think, with the cue to help bolster the story and set up more of the story of the cartoon world. It felt zanier later because we already had seen so many little visual gags in the queue that complements what was. It gets you ready for what's in there, right? In the Chinese theater version, you're just in the Chinese theater. You're going to premiere and you walk through rooms, and then the cartoon just starts. That is your first real experience with the cartoon world, is watching a cartoon, and then the moment you enter the cartoon world is the screen exploding and you go through. Here, you're in the cartoon world when you enter the land, and so a whole bunch of other stuff has set that up, and then the queue, all your time in there, really eases you into that world and provides a number of gags that already begin the experience before you're on the ride, and adds the zaniness that I had wished there was more of in the Florida one, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it does. So, in total, you should absolutely go ride Runaway Railway at Disneyland. I think you will feel the same. Even if you love Runaway Railway in Florida, you're going to love this one even more. The queue is... I don't want to buy Lightning Lane because I want to see the queue, but I know I got to fight for, at least as of today, they're doing boarding groups, and I'm willing to fight that boarding group process and fight that phone at 7 a.m. to get to walk through that queue again tomorrow, because I want to take in those details again, and really those little improvements let me enjoy the ride more. Like the ride is perfectly fine, not my favorite, but has moments. I like the song. And there's little jokes and things that Goofy makes, and some of the other, I get a chuckle out of me. It has its moments. It's again, not the ride I would have built, and not my favorite ride, but it's good enough. I think it's good enough. It achieves what it needs to, and it's great to have Disneyland adding capacity to a park that is always so busy, giving people another thing to do, adding more space for people to have fun and to do things, and easing some of the pressure off those other attractions. Kudos to everyone in Disneyland management who decided that was the right move. Kudos to everyone at Walt Disney Imagineering that worked on this and really improved upon what had already been done, taking something already existing and taking it to the next level. Just congratulations to everyone involved. I think it was a really, really thoughtful update, a really thoughtful second attempt, and honestly, if they're going to build this thing again, I think this is the model. I think take people to the Toon World. If you're going to build it at Disneyland Paris, don't use that Fantasyland expansion pad. Go to Walt Disney Studios Paris, expand the Toon Studio, and let it be in that cartoon world. That's where it feels right. So if this ride is going to get built at other parks, this is the model. This Disneyland version is the version that should go anywhere else, and not whatever the Hollywood Studios version of the ride is. And that's my honest review of Runaway Railway. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. Please subscribe for more great content. And if you really want to support us, you can join the WDWNT Interglobe Society at patreon.com/WDWNT. So Tom Corliss saying, yes, I actually liked a version of Runaway Railway.